The Jumper T-20 is an amazing radio, but some would argue it's a bit too small. Enter the T-18 Pro V2, a full-size radio with touchscreen and any feature you could possibly want in a radio, but some would also argue it's a bit too large. Well, Jumper is back again with a new radio with the T-14, and this one seems to be a sweet spot between those two radios. So let's open this up and see if it's right for you. Okay, so here it is, the Jumper T-14, and as you can see, it's in a traditional Jumper style box. On the side here, you have some specification that says T-14 CNC Hall Express ELRS 2.4G. Now the Jumper T-14 comes in numerous configurations, whether it be Express ELRS 2.4G or 900 megahertz, all good for 1 watt. So let's open this up and see how it looks. All right, so the first thing I see here is the instruction manual. It looks really nice and premium, nice prints with nice color pictures on here, really nice touch. And then we're greeted here by the actual case for the T-14. Now, Jumper has been included in the case with their radios for the last couple of radios, and that's a really nice touch compared to where they've come before in the past. All right, so let's open this case up and see what the radio looks like. All right, so here's your radio, first of all. On the top pouch here, you have a traditional Jumper strap or neck strap, which is pretty cool. You have a USB-C to USB-A cable, good for charging and interfacing with the computer. And then you have some springs here to change the tension on your actual gimbals. Really nice. And then last but not least, you have a card here, looks like a quality control card. And it was checked and it said it was passed. So we'll see about that. Besides that, here is the radio in this nice case. It has a nice little strap on here. Let's pull this out. And wow, it does look a little bit of a merge between the T-20 and the T-18. And this thing, it feels super light. Obviously, there's no batteries in here, but first impression is pretty cool. Let's remove these gimbal covers or protectors. Feels really nice. Interesting. You have this nice little blue color. And this, as I said before, is kind of a combination between the two radios. And they've taken on the similar color that we've seen on the Jumper T-20. As you can see, that nice little blue color. Now, surprisingly, this radio here feels really nice in the hand. I say surprisingly, but some people like the T-20. It does feel a little bit shorter. It does. I have really big hands, but it fits in here pretty decently. You can see my thumb. It's kind of hard to reach down here. But with this one, it feels more natural. Now, there's no denying it, this thing takes inspiration from the Boxer or the Mambo, TBS Mambo. These are kind of mid-sized radios, and this is probably the perfect size for most people. If you're a pincher, it works pretty well. If you're a thumber like myself, it also works really well. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this T-14 here. Starting from the bottom here, the first thing I notice here is this big screen. This is a 2.4-inch OLED screen, which is good for higher refresh rates and also for deeper contrast, which is good for brighter environments, say you're flying outdoors. Really nice touch and a big improvement from some of the LCD screens of the past. Now to the left and right of the screen, you have your navigation buttons and wheels. This is your menu button, your left and right button, as well as a back button. To the right, you have your scroll wheel to cycle through the menu, as well as selecting it. And it feels pretty nice and smooth and it's very tactile. Now above that, you have your lanyard hook, which is really cool. For a radio of this size, you do want to have a lanyard hook, especially when you put the batteries in here. Now to the left and right, you have your actual trim buttons on here. It's like a 5-directional joystick, up, down, left, right, and it's also selectable in the center. Now above that, you also have your power button. Now this is a little bit different power button compared to all the previous radios. You can see it's a little bit different. It does have the Jumper logo in here, pretty cool. But I like the fact that it's pretty big, so if you're wearing gloves, you can actually find and touch it. Now right above that, you have your speaker. We don't know how loud this speaker is gonna be, but traditionally Jumper has pretty decent speakers. They're not the loudest, but they are okay, pretty on par. Now to the left and right of the power button, you have your gimbals on here, and this is probably the most important part of any radio, just because this is what you're touching. This is the user interface, and this is what you're feeling as you fly your drone. Now this thing feels pretty decent. Now in this case, we do have CNC gimbals on here, which is pretty nice. Now the sensor in here has been changed. Typically Jumper has gone with an RDC 90 gimbal or sensor on their radios, which is pretty nice, really good sensitivity. Now, a lot of pilots were wondering why Jumper did not go with Hall sensors on the previous radios, and Jumper did hear you and listen to the pilots, and they're now offering this radio with Hall sensors, which is pretty cool, and hopefully it's an improvement, and most pilots like that decision. Besides that, this one here is the CNC version. There's also a regular gimbal as well, plastic gimbals, but these seem to be pretty fine and on par with the others from the previous radios. Very, very smooth. Now, the only difference that I see here is that on the left stick, the throttle, it was very, very smooth. On the T-14, there's more like a notchy feel to that. Maybe that can be adjusted in the back or in the inside of the radio, but you do have that notchy feel, which I've also felt on other radios in the past. That's not a big deal, but I wonder why they didn't go with a more smoother feel from their other radios. That's also smooth. And then the T-18, that's also smooth. So I do think that there's a setting that can be changed to make this a little bit smoother and less notchy. And it's pretty cool that they have Hall sensors in here. Hopefully that pleases most of the pilots on the market. Now, above that, we have 2 pods on here, which we see typically on other radios, including Jumper radios. Now, this one here is pretty nice and smooth as well. There is a slight little detent in the center, which is pretty cool. But most pilots aren't going to be using this flying FPV drones, but it's nice that they have this also on this radio. Now, besides that, we have all these switches. Now, you have a slew of switches on this radio. First of all, we have 2 2-position switch and also 2 3-position switches right here. Really, really nice, and gives you a lot of options if you want to configure this radio for numerous aircraft. Now, on top here, you have 2 switches as well. You also have a latching switch on the left side and a momentary switch on the right side. Now, a lot of people, this is kind of a hit and miss and kind of subjective. Some pilots like to have these selectable switches, these flush switches on here. I have a love-hate relationship with them. I like them because it's easy to pack when you want to pack this and collapse this into a bag for transport. Really, really nice and clean. You can't really break the switches on these. But at the same time, I have trouble when I have these switches when it's time to disarm my drone. Arming is never a problem, but when it's time to actually land the craft and then disarm, either I have to release this throttle here, or when I press this trigger, it tends to make me move my thrust or my throttle right here. Now, if you're like me, you have a love-hate relationship with these switches right here. Jumper does give you the option to change them to a traditional switch. As we see right here, we have the option to add a 2-way toggle switch on here, and everything's included here in this little package. So you can buy this if you want to and reconfigure the switch to a traditional switch, just like the ones on your T-18 right here. So that's a pretty cool touch that they had that available, and they know that the pilots want that option, so pretty cool. Now, since we're on top, let's talk about some of the things on here. The first thing I see here is this nice collapsible antenna, and we've seen this before on the T-20, what we have right here. Not only is it collapsible, it also can rotate as well. So really nice touch. I think this is a very, very good design and very, very clean when it's time to transport this for packing or for travels. Now, on top, we're talking about antennas. You also have 2 ports in here. This is a user upgradable port if you want to upgrade the antennas on here in the future or add some module in here. You do have 2 ports already here for that. Now, to the left, you also have a trainer port. In the center, you have a button here. This is a DFU button in case you want to flash this or reboot this. And to the right, you have a USB-C port here, which is good for charging and for using this on the computer. Now, talking about charging, this USB port here is good for charging up to 10 watts of power for your battery. So this does have fast charging on this radio. That's a really good thing if you're in the field and you want to recharge this thing pretty quickly. And I'm surprised the older or the other radios didn't have that feature, but it's cool to see that Jumper is bringing modern design and technology to their radios. Now, moving to the back of the T-14, you have this handle or stand if you want to prop your radio up or carry your radio. That's a pretty cool design, opposed to just holding it by the antenna, which we used on other radios. But you have this right here, and it's not optional, and it can collapse, which is a pretty cool design. That's a Jumper thing. The other radios did have that. Now, under the handle, you have a standard JR bay in case you want to add any additional features to this radio, say, for example, a crossfire or maybe a full-size express ELRS module on here. This is capable for that. Pretty nice touch. Now below the JRB, you have a cooling fan here with the Express ELRS logo on here. And we did see this previously on the T-20 Gemini. It looks like a very similar fan. Let's take a look if it's the same size. It might be the similar fan, but this is pretty cool because we do have a 1-watt module in this radio, so this thing will require additional cooling. Now under that you have your battery compartment, and I see they made a little redesign with these little tabs right here. All right. Now that's pretty cool, and I'm sure they got some feedback from some of the other users because this older design was extremely hard to get off. They've gone with this little tab right here, and this seems to be a simpler design. Now you have your battery tray here. This takes two 21700 batteries. You can also fit 18650 in here, and that's the option we're gonna go with today. Now under the battery tray here, it's kind of hard to see. There's also like a small tab battery, and that's used to keep the memory in place. Looks like a lithium cell, a CR1220 battery on here. Now, if you have an external or a third-party battery, you can also unplug it and put it in here, but it's pretty cool that they have a nice little foam here to prevent the vibration from this battery pack. And that was kind of a complaint on some of the other radios. The grip on here is pretty cool in the back. That's one thing I forgot to mention. You have these bigger grips on the back here, and it's a welcome sign for pilots like me with larger hands. The grips on the previous radio weren't necessarily bad, but they weren't that deep on here. It's kind of hard to have a nice little grip on here. This one is a little bit deeper with some bigger bolstering on here, and this really fits perfectly in my hand, guys. Really, really nice. So let's put some battery here, power this thing on, and see how it looks. Okay, so we now have batteries in the T-14. Let's power this on and see how it looks. Pretty cool, nice blue screen.
Welcome to HTX. Switch warning.
All right, so the speaker isn't bad. It's very clear actually, and the volume isn't the loudest, but it sounds pretty good, pretty acceptable for sure. So we have our warning switcher. This OLED screen looks really, really nice, and you have your status lights on each side of the screen. So it's gonna change color depending on the status of the radio. So we have all our switches in the wrong direction here. All right, and there you go. It turns to green, and now we have Model 1. So they've built a model in here for us, and here you go. You can see all your position for all your sticks. Really nice. I like this page right here, so I'll keep it right here for now. Okay, so I want to see how bright this screen here gets. Let's go to some of the settings here. We're just going to press and hold this button here. Go to Tools. We have Express ELRS and Wizard Loader. We'll get back to the Express ELRS later once we bind this to our radio. We're going to go to the next page. This is for our SD card. Now the SD card is actually built into the radio. Typically in older radios, you'll have to put a micro SD card in the back, and then you can actually update the software on that card via the computer, via a card reader. In this case, this one is built into the radio, so to access that card, you have to plug this into the computer and get access to that memory that way. In this case, we're just gonna go to page 3, radio setup here. Date and time, we can change that. Don't wanna do that right now. All right, so that's all set. Let's go to the brightness. Here it is, brightness. It's on, I think, 254. I think that's the maximum. You can lower it, obviously. So, okay, so there you go. It goes down. So it was set to the maximum brightness, which is pretty cool. And it goes down to 2. Hopefully you can see that. I like it at maximum brightness, 254. And then the version here, let's see what it says. T-14 version 2.1. But that's just the version of the HTX, which is fine, that makes sense. We'll go to Express ELRS and see what version they're using on there. So let's see here, we'll go to that right now actually. Express ELRS, pretty cool, T-14 2.4 GTX, packet rate that's set to 50. You can obviously change that if you want to. Let's go to, does it really matter, 250. This is obviously the latest version, so it has 1000 hertz on here. Let's go 250, that's fine. Model match off. All right, here's TX power. Now I'm surprised the fan is on at 25 milliwatts, but we'll see what it is. It shows it to you right there. So let's go to the, let's see what the options are. 25, 50, 100, 250, 500, and there you go, 1 watt or 1000 milliwatts. I'm never gonna fly that high of a power. I usually fly around between 100 and 250. Let's go to 250. That's gonna be what it's gonna be set to. And the fan threshold is super low. It's set to 100 milliwatts. I'm gonna change that to a little bit higher number. And then back, that looks good. VTX administrator, that's pretty standard. Wi-Fi connectivity, backpack support, Bluetooth joystick. Here's your bind, and here we go. We're on version 3.3.1. So pretty latest version of Express ELRS. So I'm just gonna update the passphrase on this radar here so I can bind to my drones. I'm gonna bind to my drones and see how it works. So I'm just gonna go to Wi-Fi connectivity, enable Wi-Fi. That's going. I'm gonna go on my computer that I have right here in front of me. I'm just gonna go to my Wi-Fi settings here, make sure I can connect to this radar. It says Wi-Fi running, so that should be working. And here it is, Express ELRS TX. I'm gonna join that network. It should automatically go to my web URL. Cool. So there is 10.0.0.1, and here we go. I have my Express ELRS. It says jumper right here, T-14, 2.4 gigahertz, TX, firmware 3.3.1, which we did confirm. And I'm just gonna go right here and adjust my binding phrase. You also have other options here as well, Wi-Fi to update it via your home network. And then you can update the firmware on the radio as well, or at least the Express ELRS module in the radio as well. In this case, I'm just gonna update the binding phrase so I can have this bind automatically to all the drones in my fleet. I'm just gonna put the phrase right here. All right, and then just hit save and see if it works. Reboot. Perfect. I can hit the back and that should work. Now this should bind automatically to my drone if I hit the back button out here. Now the only thing is I don't have my mixers and my inputs, my aux switches set up. So I'm gonna do that really quickly. Well, okay, just to prove to you that it does work, it does bind with that feature, let's just plug in my drone right here. I have my 25. This is a sub 250 5-inch drone. Let's zoom out here a bit. What we're gonna do here is just bind it and see if it shows telemetry. Put that over here. There you go. We have telemetry. It's going to be hard for you to see that. But if you take a look at it, we have telemetry right here. So that method did work. That's a good way of changing the passphrase on a new device, whether it be a receiver or a transmitter. Just going to any cell phone or mobile device and just changing the passphrase using the Wi-Fi connectivity function of this. Now this radar here isn't gonna bind or work or make this drone here arm, only because I don't have my aux switches set up right yet. So that's something I have to do. So let me just put that into here and then we're gonna try that if we can just arm this drone. I probably won't fly it in here, but see if we can arm it and see if that works. Okay, so I have my inputs and mixes in here, so this thing should be really good to go. Let's power on my drone and see if this thing here can be armed. I'm gonna step back because this thing is a unprotected drone. All right, so let's hit the arm button. Well, let's try the beeper first. The beeper works, so let's arm it. That works. All right, we're not gonna take it off. All right, so that all works. Let's unplug this bad boy. Pretty cool. I probably should have used a Sentinel instead of this drone for this demonstration. So let's power this thing down. It is really nice seeing a screen of this size with OLED. It's very vibrant. And I don't think this should be a problem flying this thing outdoors. Okay, so this thing here works. So overall, what do I think about the T-14? Well, I do think that this is a pretty good radio. A lot of people think that these manufacturers make tons and tons of radios and they change every so often, every month or so. But I do think that this radar here was warranted in the lineup of radios. Now, this one here is pretty cool. It fits in the palm of your hands. This thing is not too large, not too big. You have Hall sensor gimbals. You have this larger OLED screen. You have a 1-watt module in here and the ability to upgrade with this JR Bay in the back here. Overall, this is a nice radio, and considering the price point, especially compared to the competitors, this would be a viable option. Now, long term, I don't know how long this radar here is gonna last. Only time will tell how long this thing lasts and how well it performs. But for initial impressions at the time of filming, as I just got this thing does a pretty good job. No serious issues here on the surface of the radio. And as you can see, guys, this thing fits really well in their total lineup of radios. you have the smaller T-lite, you have the T-20, and now you have the T-14, which kind of fits in a separate segment, just like I said before, like the Mambo and also the Radio Master Boxer as well. This is a really cool radio, and I can see why guys kind of gravitate towards this kind of style of radio. And then if you want all the bang, all the features, you have the T-18 Pro V2. This thing is full of features, nice design. You have this RDC 90 gimbals, and you have this nice touch screen on here as well. All the switches that you would need. This thing is filled with switches on the T-18 Pro. So I do think that that was a little sweet spot. There was a bigger gap between the T-20 and also the T-18s, and I do think that the T-14 fills that void really nicely. As I said before, the price point is really nice, guys. Now, if you want a review of all of these radios, I've done full reviews on each one of these radios. I'll leave them linked down below as well. So let me know what you think about the T-14 down below. Does this interest you? Does this fill the void? Do you feel like everyone now is switching towards this form factor of radio? Let me know in the comments down below. So anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.